thank you for joining us today. My name is Amelia Rhodes, and I am here with a very special guest, Amy Sullivan.
Oh,
Amy is a blogger and an author, and her new book, When More Is Not Enough, just released. Well, we're talking on Tuesday. It released yesterday, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And you were joining me from North Carolina. Do I have that right?
I am joining you from North Carolina, but I am a former Michigan girl,
That's right.
so heart for Michigan.
Heart Sisters, yes. Well, I'm so excited to introduce you to Amy, and I would like for you just to tell a little bit about yourself and your family.
Sure. Well, we moved to North Carolina about 8 years ago from Colorado, but I'm a Midwest girl. Grew up in the Midwest. Been married for 16 years. I can't believe it.
Awesome! Congratulations!
Thank you. I don't feel like I'm that old,
Right.
but apparently that happens. And we have two girls, Amelia.
Perfect!
Yeah.
Love that name.
We have Amelia, and she is almost 12, and then we have Ruby, who is 5.5.
Wow. Well, it's so good to have you today, and I loved the subtitle for your book. It's called How to Stop Giving Your Kids What They Want and Give Them What They Need. And I think this is just such a great premise and such a needed topic to talk about today. But I want to know why this book, why this topic? How did this start for you?
Well, thank you. This started really out of a bad Christmas experience. And so it was a couple days after Christmas, and we had unwrapped gifts. And, sometimes you get gift cards and cash for
Right.
Christmas. And so we had extra, and we just went on, continued to spend. And so this wasn't really born out of something our children did, but out of the way we were living. And then when we looked at our kids, we were looking what we were passing on to them, and we just weren't happy about it. So that's where the idea was born.
About how long ago was this Christmas moment?
Okay, the Christmas moment, I'm going to say it was 3 Christmases ago.
Okay, so your kids were like 9 and kind of approaching that middle school age, a critical
Yes.
time to start teaching generosity and reaching out.
Right.
Okay, well, I loved the story in the book too. You'll just have to read it to hear about what they ended up buying. I'm not going to tell you, so you'll go read it.
Which we still, by the way, have it hanging in our house.
I wondered.
That's more of a joke.
I wondered. Okay, so now you all have to read the book so you can find out what's hanging in her house. I wondered when I read that.
We hang.
What's that?
What weird things we hang in our house.
Right. Okay, so then my next question was, you started out, and I loved that first chapter where you said, but I don't know any poor people, and why you just need to start. And I read that, and I thought how true that is for a certain segment of our population where you're like, I don't know anybody. Where do I even begin? I don't live in the inner city. I live in the country. Or so talk to us a little bit about that and how we can just begin.
Well, when we started thinking about serving in our community, it was a little bit of a sell to our kids. Because we were involved in church and, volunteered there or did small things, but nothing where we were really invested in it. And so when we started reaching out and doing things that were different, one of the first things we did was work at a food bank, like a distribution center. And so when I was telling our daughter about it, she, number one, had really no interest in doing it. And then 2, she was astounded that there were kids that didn't have enough to eat. Now, like you said, she was older. And so that shocked me that we had done such a poor job of parenting that we hadn't explained we're surrounded by people whose needs aren't met just because you may not be face-to-face with them every day. And so when she said, but I don't know any poor people, who would they be? That was definitely a wake-up call for us.
Right. And so you just began a process of exploring your local community, right? And finding what the needs were?
Right. And it was a funny process because I really felt from the beginning, I think being involved in church is awesome and everybody should be, but I also think you need to reach beyond that. And where we live, there are all kinds of organizations. We live in a large enough community where there are a bunch of nonprofits set up. And so we just started reaching out and doing events with really whoever, just to see what our interests were. Because we didn't even know really what we were interested in doing. And I think when people think of serving, they just automatically think food bank or, homeless shelter.
And something I want to point out, in the back of the book, it's almost like an appendix, but you have all these additional resources, and there are things, I believe a list of resources online that people can look up, and really to instruct people where to begin. Am I right about that?
And even if you live in a small community, there are national organizations like the Hands On Network and Volunteer Match that will make you aware of things that might be happening in your community that you've never even heard of. So it's not just, this is what you could do in North Carolina.
Right.
Yeah.
And serving is not a one size fits all. And in your chapter on being generous with your skills, I loved how at the end of the chapter, you kind of have this questionnaire for everybody to fill out, adults, older children, younger children, to realize you have things to offer. And this isn't a one size fits all kind of thing. There are opportunities that are unique for everybody to serve, right?
Right. And that was surprising for me. I mean, it shouldn't be. You should pay attention to your family's interests. Mm-hmm. But I felt like I was always dragging my husband along on service projects until I realized we were doing nothing that he was interested in. Mm-hmm. And if he could coach at-risk teens or build something with his hands, he was all about it. He was in. If I am setting him up to craft some shoes or, do something with women who are homeless, he's not about that. That feels like a chore for him, and I need to respect that and find a place for him to use his gifts instead of forcing it on him.
Right.
So that was big, and for me to see that same thing applies to my kids.
Right. So they each, it's amazing how young that starts. They each have things that they're interested in, and gifts and talents and passions, and they'll be different than yours.
Right. Our daughter, Amelia, she loves to create. It doesn't matter if it's baking or crafts or whatever. And I feel like sometimes as a parent, we dismiss that a little bit. It's an age, they're just making something. But for her, it's truly a gift. I mean, she just pours into that. And because I like to cook.
Right.
But I'm not a crafter, so I would dismiss that too much. And really, something that wasn't in there, it dawned on me one year when she made cards. We live on a circle. Uh-huh. She made hand cards for everybody in our neighborhood, Christmas cards, and telling them, Jesus is born. And it just struck me like, this is her. This is how she serves people. You need to acknowledge that.
And I think, too, as parents, because this really is a book designed for parents to help children,
right.
To begin to see what your children are good at, and even to begin to see at 9, 10, 11 what their calling can be in the future. Not just in the future, but now. What their calling is now.
Right. That is absolutely true, because this is a time where they're really observing and they know what they like. They know where their interest is, and I think they have some self-awareness at this time too. So it's perfect age.
So one of the tools that you have developed in the book that I really appreciate is at the end of each chapter you have these discussion guides, or I think you call them dinner table conversations. Yes. And they're kind of broken into sections. So there was a few for you as the reader, the adult, to think about, and things to discuss as children. And I just thought that was really brilliant. Can you give us some tips on maybe how to make the most of that section? I don't know that it's necessarily a book you would read together with your children, but that section.
Right. So I don't know what dinner's like at your house, but I feel like our dinner questions are always the same. How's your day?
Right.
How's the things with that friend going, that specific friend? But we do sit down and eat together. That's one thing that we do in the house. And so I was really thinking about how to maximize that time. And, we've been out to restaurants before where they've had the little cards on the table, conversation starts. Yeah. Our kids eat that up. And so I was just thinking, is there a way we could actually bring some more meaning into our dinner table dialogue? And so my hope is, I'm not expecting people to take the book to the table and, read from it, but just for it to be a starting point, because the conversations go along with the chapter, and there's just 4 or 5 kind of guiding questions. I feel like just breezing over them, as you're setting stuff on the table, will give you a place to start.
Right.
And it will bring new topics up.
Right.
And my kids enjoy it. They enjoy it so much that I'm almost thinking I should have probably put more of that in there, because they like to talk. They like to talk about themselves, and they like to hear about us. And we forget that they enjoy hearing about what our skills and talents were when we were their age.
There you go. Some supplemental resources. You can add questions and then make them available on your website.
Yes, there we go. There's an idea.
They really are. They're really great discussion starters.
Thank you.
So that's a fantastic tool. And for families who don't have dinner together, this could be even something you try to do once a week, maybe on a Sunday afternoon, or
in the car.
Yeah, road trip conversations. Yeah.
Practice. You just are thinking about it and toss it out there. So I think it's it's something that hopefully is easy to incorporate in everyone's busy lives.
Right. Well, one of the other chapters that I found really fun and a surprising kind of topic for a book like this was being generous with strangers. And I don't want to spoil the story. Again, it's another one you just have to pick up the book and read. Just trust me. You will laugh. Probably Amy was the only one who wasn't laughing. At your expense. So glad you shared that story. Now I got everybody curious.
Yeah.
But this is a topic I like to talk about too, of just speaking with people when you're out and about in the community and being aware. And so often we are caught up in our phones and our headphones are in, and we're not paying attention to the people who are around us. And I think you had said we take that stranger danger almost too far and that we don't talk to anyone. And I think different communities and different cultures are different. And I noticed when I've been in communities different than my own where I live now, and people are like super, super friendly. I'm like, what do they want from me? What are they trying to tell me? What do they want?
Yes. That is.
Share with us a little bit about that, the importance of that.
Right. I mean, exactly like you're saying, when I grew up south of Chicago and people, we wave. There is no reason to do more than that. When you are passing the neighborhood, when you see people walking, hello, you wave. And when we moved to the South, I was absolutely overwhelmed by the number of people who would not only stop their car, but want to engage, in conversation.
Wow.
I thought the exact thing you thought. That it's weird. I told my husband at one point, I'm like, are they going to steal from us? Why? And someone had said, I noticed you're from Colorado. And I told my husband, how they know that? And he's like, they looked at the plates. Like, this isn't weird. This is just people being friendly.
Right.
And so, strangers, like you said, the stranger danger, I feel like we're afraid as parents because we see the news, and we're so afraid that we forget to engage with people who we know and we see constantly, the cashier, the bank tellers, people that we should know their names because we go there so much. And so being generous with strangers, really, it was new to me because it's a little uncomfortable. And it's hard to find the balance as a parent as to what's a safe stranger and what's not. Right. But I also think it's a great way you can teach your kids about discernment. And, gosh, I feel a little weird about somebody I don't know. That opens all kinds of questions, too, and discussions. So, yeah, that was a fun chapter, but that was hard for me because, like I said, I'm a wave. Let's wave.
Right. Keep it there. Hey,
we're good. Not anymore, though. The South is doing something to me. It's messing me up.
How long have you been in North Carolina?
Like 8 years.
8 years. Okay.
It's taken a while.
We lived in Florida for 6, and it doesn't take long before it starts to rub off on you.
Yes.
Well, and at the end of the book, there's some great, like I said, some great resources, and one of them was a letter to a dad from a dad that your husband wrote, right?
Right. It is. I feel like what I hear from a lot of women are, I want to do it, but my husband, it's hard to get him interested. And so I think just going back to what we were talking about before, just really tapping into what they enjoy. Because when my husband was somebody who was initiating an activity, it went so much better. And so I feel like even though the audience for this book is Christian moms, I wanted to acknowledge that the dads are, central in if you really want to change the way your family sees and serves others. They have to be on board and involved. And so that was just a fun way, I felt like, of including my husband in the process.
Do you find you do a number of things as a family, but then you have each found things that you do on your own? Because I know you said in the book there were things your husband really loved that you didn't, and things that you loved that your kids didn't. So how do you balance that, serving as a family, and then also allowing each of them to serve on their own?
Well, I mean, first, we're realistic. I don't think that we're out like every night of the week, just like hammering the streets. But I do feel like we have our own little niche, all of us. So one of mine is women and children. So I'm just, every other week, I have a women and children's home that I go to, and I just babysit. That's what I do for them so they can take classes. They have classes to take. And so I feel like we have built that into our schedule. One thing we discovered that was kind of eye-opening for us is my husband coaches, and we never really saw that as a ministry. Okay. Which sounds dumb. Right. Because he coaches high school kids, and so we really, I feel like we've learned to validate that and be intentional with his relationships there. And so that is a ministry for him. So a lot of this is just built into our life.
Right.
We are not have like a master schedule. We're like, okay, well, next week you're gonna, hold a fundraiser. It's just really incorporating it into every day.
I think that's important to note, to make this serving community, being aware of your community, just part of your day in and day out life.
Right.
Well, the proceeds from your book are going to an organization that you're passionate about. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the place I volunteer now is called Steadfast House, and Steadfast House is fabulous, except that it can only hold 44 women. You can't hold any more than that. And there is obviously a big need in our community for more than 44 beds.
Right.
And so they are working to build a housing development called Transformation Village, and it will house women who are veterans, women and children, and then a big thing, what I'm passionate about, is that it will house families in crisis. Because right now, if you're a family in crisis, you are divided. It doesn't matter if you are married as a unit and women go one place, men go another. And sadly, if you are a boy who's 13 years or older, you can't go to the men's or the women's, and you have to go to foster care. So you have parents, they are still married, and there is no place for you. And so I really love the idea of Transformation Village. Plus they have provide training and education and parenting classes. So it's not just come get a meal, here are some clothes. People are really going to invest in the lives. So I'm excited, and they've recently found some land. And so it's fun to be just a teeny part of the process and see it start. We're thrilled about that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And then you also had another organization that you had found that you wanted to tell us about for helping kids be generous.
Right. So recently I discovered Start a Snowball. So they're online, Start a Snowball, and they are specifically focused on kids. They give grants to kids who want to make a difference.
That's awesome.
And so the maximum the child can get is $100. But they have a little grant form that you have to write up. The child writes up and submits, and then they find out if it was accepted or denied. And so our daughter just got one, and I was so excited. Yes, because she wanted to do something, but also because I saw how easy it was, and I just want to tell everybody about it.
And it's something that they do, like they have to fill out the form, right?
Yes, it's her idea. What she and a friend want to help out. There's a new place in our community called Sweetwater Youth Ranch, and it is a horse ranch. And they do therapy with horses, and they work with at-risk teens, but they are just starting out. And so they wanted to write a grant. They did write a grant about helping them design a brochure, because this place doesn't even have a brochure. So they want to design it. Well, they had to do tons of things for that. They had to email a designer, which was really funny, to be like, hi. How much would it cost to make a flyer?
Awesome.
that was great for them to reach out. So Start a Snowball. There are all kinds of stories on there. It's just a really great organization if you are looking to give empower your child a little bit. Or if you live in a smaller community. I know in small communities, sometimes it's hard to find a place to plug in. And so that would be a great way to have your kid get started.
Well, I'll provide a link to that within the blog post. And make sure you check out the link for Amy's book. It's available on Amazon. I saw it's available as a Nook on Barnes & Noble.
Hey!
Yeah, so make sure you check out When More Is Not Enough. Read it. It's a very fun read. It's serious, important topics, but your voice was very fun and engaging. It's not a guilt trip. And I really think that everyone will enjoy it. And even if you don't have kids, I still think there is so much value in this and learning to see outside of ourselves. So thank you for joining us today, Amy. Check out the links, everybody, and go pick up her book, When More Is Not Enough. And Amy, I've never met in person, but in 3 weeks at the Breathe Christian Writers Conference, we're going to get to meet in person. So
we will. I'm so excited about that. So yes, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming, Amy.
Okay, bye.
Bye.